everyone. Welcome to the Dreamcatcher podcast, a place where your dreams can find a voice. Sometimes we all need a little direction in life, whether it's to see a problem in a new perspective, confirm a gut feeling, or just remember that we're all in this together. My guest today, Hallie Bateman, is a pro at providing these reminders. Through her colorful and inspirational posts, Hallie shares directions for how to live to her 92,000 followers on Instagram. She is an illust-writer and author who has been featured in national publications, including The New Yorker, the New York Times Magazine, BuzzFeed, and many others. She is a keen observer with a determination to pay close attention to the nuanced details in her life and the world around her. And in this interview, Hallie is going to uplift us by sharing her creative process and strategy. She'll also offer advice on how to find our own unique ways of expressing our ideas and get over creative blocks. And if you like what you heard, please don't forget to like, rate, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Thank you. Hi, Hallie. How's it going?
Hi, doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am so glad that we have this opportunity to talk about you and your creative process and how it inspired you to write this beautiful gem, Directions. Really good advice for getting from here to there. I have to say it was a real treat to browse through all these illustrations. And I just love how you're able to combine inspiration, humor, and a little bit of sassiness. I did pick up on that. And I think that's what makes it also relatable.
Thank you so much. That's so nice to hear. Yeah, this book is certainly a mixture of enough things. I remember when I showed it to my husband and we were just talking about what this book is. He was like, this book is basically you in a book, which is pretty accurate. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's a good thing. That means it's a true expression of what you feel and who you are. And that's the way it should be, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Great. So, Hallie, you call yourself an artist and a writer. How were you able to blend these two parts of you, these two abilities, and really create your own unique way of expressing yourself? Because you do have a very unique style. So, just would love to know how you're able to merge those two parts of you.
Yeah, that's a great question. It was something that definitely developed over time. I started out as a writing major in college, and I had always drawn since I was a kid. I was like making comics all the time and was very into drawing, but not in a way where I ever somehow thought that I was good at it or that it could be a job. It was more about having fun with it. And so it didn't really happen until junior year of college where it finally clicked that the art could be a part of my writing and that illustration could complete my writing. I had been taking like fiction classes and I'd always been a strong writer, but it didn't really feel right to me. It didn't really make sense to me until I introduced drawing into it. And then I felt like I loved my writing more because of the drawings, and I loved my drawings more because of the writing. And then over years and over, becoming an actual, for my profession, becoming an illustrator and a writer, I started to call myself an illust-writer because that term kind of made sense to me. I identified with other artists who, I think R.O. Bleckman said he's a writer who draws, and I thought that really made a lot of sense to me. He talked about how it wasn't the point. The point of it wasn't that he was, drawing something to look like reality or doing the perfect shading of something to try to it wasn't about the rendering. It was about serving the story and having the drawings fit with the writing in their simplicity and kind of economy of language being combined with the economy of lines. Like a lot of my work, I do more detailed paintings, but a lot of my work is really quickly drawn, and that's intentional. Like I want my drawings to really feel like writing, and I want my writing to feel like drawing.
Interesting. And I love the fact that you mentioned the word economy, because I feel that, as a writer, I sometimes feel limited with the amount of, um, the amount of words that I can put into a certain type of writing that I do. Do you ever feel that way? Do you ever feel limited with the amount of space you have, say, in a drawing that you make? Do you feel like you can express yourself enough?
So you mean like you'll kind of be like, how could I possibly explain this? How could I have enough space to explain this?
Right, right. Especially if you come from a writing background and you've written long form content.
Yeah, I think for me, I always I do really enjoy writing in like I do enjoy writing essays from time to time, or diving into a longer project. But to me, the thing that I love about writing the way I write, and working in comics and in a graphic form, is that I can express multitudes with something so simple, and I feel like that's kind of the power that I try to harness, is that I I can actually simplify things in a way that makes my brain like exhale, because sometimes you'll be trying to express something, and you're right, there's almost no limit to how much you could write about certain things. And it's such a cliche, it's like a picture says 1,000 words,
I
but
was
that,
just gonna say the same
yeah.
thing. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
The that is kind of the power that I think graphic storytelling has, is that you can cut out, like, let's say you have 700 words, cut out 600 of them, include an illustration, there you go. Like, or cut out all of the words except 5 words. Like sometimes I just think that the power of working with images as well as words is that you can dictate with the image tone and humor. Like the thing that really clicked for me when I started adding illustrations to my work was that I could tell people that I was joking, because the lines and the look of the illustration, I could draw something that was funny, and then all of it would be funny because I'm telling the reader this is supposed to be funny. And I just found that to be such a relief, and a way that I could communicate my sensibility without having to do this like complex song and dance. Like it felt like I could just very easily be like, you can tell it's funny because it looks funny, or just because of the mood of the drawing, or things like that.
Right, right. That's interesting. So you found being able to draw more freeing, and an an outlet where it's easier for you to express the fullness of your ideas.
Yeah, before that, I remember actually writing in my journal about how frustrated I was with writing, and how I would like feel really pent up, and feel like I was supposed to be getting something out of writing that I really wasn't. Like in my classes, I remember sitting in my creative writing classes and just being like, I don't even know what to feel about this, and I don't really care about my stories that much. Like everyone around me seems really like committed to their craft and stuff, and I'm like, I can't even tell if this is good, or like why I'm doing it. And to me, adding illustration just made everything make sense, and gave me so much more context for my own creative like impulses, that I I'm someone who's motivated by, I like to share my work, and I wanted to be interacting with the world. And like once I started making comics for the school paper and doing things that
Just
were
off.
outward facing. I loved that, and that was what was so much more motivating to me than just like sitting in a classroom and criticizing things. I just wanted to be doing it.
Right. And how did your creative ideas come to you? I mean, because obviously you were not able to express yourself enough through writing. So how do you get all these ideas for your drawings and for all your illustrations? Like, how does it come to you?
I think for me, the very first step is always like sitting down with the materials, and it's not really something where I mean, sometimes I will go for a walk and write something entirely in my head, and that is something that does happen. But a lot of times, and this is exactly how directions came to exist, I sat down with a bunch of torn up construction paper and with my inks and my pens, and I was just playing,
Mm,
and what came out. And I've art has been how I play ever since I was a kid, and it's how I play still with my friends and with my family, and it really
yeah,
comes down to
what's that quote by Einstein? Creativity is intelligence having fun. Have you heard that?
ooh, I like that. I like that. Yeah, I mean, truly, I never thought of I didn't conceive of directions at all before I sat down and wrote some. And so many of my ideas, like I could not tell you how they come, besides that you touch paper and you start to have fun, and your fears start to lift away, and your doubt and your criticism of yourself starts to lift
You don't
away.
experience that? Did you have any creative blocks?
Oh, yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
How did you overcome them?
So with illustration and with drawing in general, I was remarkably unblocked, and I started in just the right setting where I wasn't really seeing it as a thing to criticize at all, and I was really having fun. So I didn't come up in like an art school setting where it felt competitive. I was teaching myself. And so I think I've been really blessed with kind of the ignorance of an outsider, as far as
Mm.
not understanding how hard
You're
it would be. Sorry?
yourself, yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Self-taught. And so I think that was a huge gift. And then um at the same time, I've certainly had big periods of creative block, especially one in my early 20s. But just just to be totally transparent, like even with directions, I every time I sat down, I had a ritual that I wrote these in, where I would get my paper. I would kind of replicate the original scenario when I wrote the first ones, which was I would tear up a bunch of construction paper, I would grind my ink, and I would get my brushes ready, and I would smoke a little weed. Cannabis was like a part of my process with this, because it's really scary to sit down at a blank page, and I kind of
Oh, yeah.
needed
Tell me about it.
the assistance of cannabis, which for me has always been a really creative, like a creative partner. I would turn on music, and I would sit down, and I would start to write, and I would feel genuine terror in my body, as if I was, in actual danger, but I wasn't. It's just the part of us that is terrified to fail, to make something bad,
Yeah.
to be exposed.
How do you identify that entity in you that's afraid and who's afraid of making mistakes and is afraid of
It's
being criticized by the hater?
it's yeah, it's I see it as kind of like the gatekeeper who's always there, who's gonna be there. Like I'm just like, why would I ever be surprised that he's there? Like, or they, whatever it is, like that voice is there. It's its job to be there. It's trying to protect me. It thinks that it's helping, and I know that it's not. And so the that voice is something that I've had a relationship with, but working on directions is the most directly that I've confronted it, because my ritual involved confronting it. So I would sit down, I would start to write, the voice would say, no, stop, bad, this sucks, you're embarrassing, stop. And I would just say, well, I've already cut up all this paper. I've already done everything in this ritual. Am I really going to stop? Like, what else have I even got to do today? Like, obviously I have other stuff to do, but there's something about setting the stage and getting other things ready and getting your materials ready that I find really helpful. In by the time you've done all that stuff, the voice pops up and it's like, no, stop. And it's like, I've already gotten everything ready. Am I really going to stop?
Structure. You create that structure really helps your creative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with directions, it was really a practice of learning to expect the voice and to ignore it and just keep writing. And honestly, the other part of it that's so helpful to me is having a big stack of paper, and your job is to write on every page. There needs to be black ink on every page. So not all of them are going to be good. Not all of them are going to make any sense.
Right.
And that's not the point. The point is to just expel, and then later look at them and sort them out, and eventually edit them and things like that. But for me, the process of going through that each time really helped me just realize, oh, that voice is just there, and I'm no longer as surprised when I encounter it, and I know not to listen to it.
That's great. That's great. I mean, it's good. You've built a relationship with that. Well, I call it like my gremlin, my inner critic.
Ooh,
So it's like,
yeah.
You got to show
that.
to it, he, she, whatever, who's boss when you start creating. I mean, you just got to do that.
Yeah, and I think if it pops, like when it pops up, it's like, yeah, you're doing it right. Like that's a sign that you're doing it right. If you're filled with that terror, like that's a sign that you're looking in the right places.
Yeah, I believe Stephen Pressfield. Have you heard of him? He calls it the resistance. It's like this force of nature. Feel that resistance that every time you try to do something that's new, you try to get outside your comfort zone, it will surface in some form or the other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And I also noticed, Hallie, you're a bit of a philosopher. I mean, after all, this is all wisdom. So how did those ideas come to you? Because you've explained like how you come up with the drawings, but like how do you come up with all these these snippets of wisdom?
So some of them are things that have bounced around in my head as a life philosophy for years, like given to me by other people. One of them that was something my best friend said was, if it ever occurs to you to buy flowers, buy them. It's never a bad idea. And that was something that I literally just borrowed from her. Her name is Alice. She's my best friend, and she's a floral designer. And I had used that and lived by that for years. And it made sense in the book. And that's something that's, that's drawn from just great advice that someone gave me. A lot of them that came out in the process I'm describing that was a stream of consciousness, expel things onto the page, felt like a surprise to me. And I couldn't, like, I can talk about them and I can certainly connect them with things in my life, but it's not like I came up with them in the course of walking around and pondering. It's really like kind of discovering that it's already written inside you, kind of thing. I'm trying to think of ones that like that.
It is, you become like this channel.
Yeah. I mean, there's some that I'll think about, some that fit that description. I mean, one of the first ones that came out was, do not be embarrassed, not even of that, not even of that. And that direction, like many of the ones that I wrote, were written before I could think about it. And then upon reading it later, felt so kind of devastatingly true and really spoke to my feelings and what I really needed to hear. And so I think in many ways I'm trying to unravel things that are painful to me, which that's an example of, or some of them are kind of about like body positivity. There's one that says, admit to yourself that your ass is exquisite.
Yeah,
and
that one.
and that's, that's something that flowed
It
out
doesn't
of
matter
me.
whether or not you squat.
Exactly. That's the kind of thing that I look at that and I'm just like, I need to hear that more than ever.
Yeah.
Uh can't necessarily
Yeah.
like pinpoint a moment that came to me, but it's like there's clearly a lot of, I think for a lot of these there's sort of a question or an ache or something that I'm speaking to when I write them.
Right. And I know that you would like your art to prompt people to think about something in a different way, in addition to having this very healing effect, which you just talked about. So why does this feel important to you?
I think that it's hard to remember that we're kind of a lot of times just living in a story that we're telling ourselves. I think that anyone who's struggled with mental illness, or like in my case, I can connect with this through having an eating disorder, where you're seeing the world through a story that you're telling yourself. And the amazing thing about art and about writing and about words is that someone can say something, you can talk to someone or hear something that literally clicks you, not literally, that clicks you out of your story for a second and shows you that it's not real, and that we can be so hard on ourselves and shape a world for ourselves that's very harsh and very painful. And I think so many of us get really accustomed to being the meanest person to ourselves that we know, and I think that that is so kind of devastating when you really can realize that. And I want this book especially, and I think so much of my work, to give people permission to step, and the ability to step outside the story they're telling themselves, and maybe get a like a talisman. Like some of these directions I think could be a talisman to hold on to keep you from sliding back into the worst story that you might be believing about yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I mean, how do you feel that by reading these, seeing these illustrations, like how does it provoke people to see themselves differently and to just get out of their story? Like how do you see that happening?
I mean, I can speak to what they do for me, because these directions are not purely something, it's not like I have mastered all of these and I'm the queen of knowing how to live. It's that these are things I wrote for myself. And so what they do for me, and what they how they enable me to like keep perspective, is they're short enough and memorable enough to almost be a bookmark to a treasure chest. Like they're like there's like a tiny like tab in your brain that remembers your ass is exquisite. It can bring you back to something that to an idea that contains multitudes. So for example, if I'm having a moment of body shame, and I'm caught in the spiral, I can remember your ass is exquisite. And I remember, first of all, the playfulness of that statement. I remember that confidence is all about a story you tell yourself. It's not one person's beautiful and one isn't. It's that one person believes their ass is exquisite and one doesn't, and it's all about the belief. And so that quick kind of funny statement unlocks for me a whole nother reality that I can run to when I'm spiraling. And I can say, oh, right. Okay, my ass is exquisite. Believing that is the key to everything. And I can now go on with my day and leave behind this shitty spiral that I just tripped into because I like saw a cover of Cosmo magazine or something.
Yeah. So they're kind of like affirmations in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it just goes straight to the heart, right? It goes past all our cerebral the stuff that gets in the way. We don't it just hits us right there, where it really matters. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why it's so powerful and people really relate to all your drawings.
Oh, thank you. I mean, that's really what I hope for is to get to the heart of things and not so much the brain of things, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
I think we were also talking earlier about how imagery can like tell you that something is humorous and that can like change the meaning of everything. And I think one thing that came to mind while you're talking is just how much the voice of a lot of these directions is kind of funny, sassy, as you mentioned, like a little silly. And I think that humor is a really amazing tool to surpass the brain part of us that's clenched and trying to figure things out. And the humor to me is something that is like such a relief to be somewhere where you can laugh at something fucked up and I don't know if I can say that, but something messed up, and that you can kind of realize that you're somewhere safe where laughter's allowed and we're talking about things, and I want the book to be that safe place.
Right. And especially when you're talking about such important things like body image, it's like, a very sensitive issue. But if you can add humor to it, then it makes it so much less intimidating.
Yeah, and I think it was a cool experience to put this book together and to choose the order of the directions and to say we're going to put this one that's about death next to this one that's about like shoes. Like we're gonna
Oh, so you did that
juxtapose.
consciously, the order of the direction.
Yeah, we wanted to, with the help of my amazing team at Workman, we wanted to create this journey that you go on where it's not like it's not a narrative book, right? It's a book of you're kind of jumping between topics, and you're kind of talking about everything in these pages. And we really did want to position, something really heavy next to something light, and then the next thing is kind of creative, and just kind of creating a place that felt like you're never gonna get that you're going to have a little bit of everything. And like you mentioned that you were turning to it every day and seeing what it offered you, and that's really what
Yeah.
I
You,
hope for
I
it to
mean,
be.
you say that at the back of the book that use it, you can use it like a magic 8 ball and use it for consultation. Like if you just randomly, pick any page and, you know, that
Yeah.
would probably be relevant to what you're going through. And that certainly has been the case for me since I got the book.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah. And Hallie, I wanted to ask you about this one statement that you made, that people don't realize how powerful art can be. Could you please expand on that?
This really speaks to, I think, something that a lot of artists have struggled with when coronavirus happened, and when just as a lot of really traumatic things have happened over the last couple of years. I think a lot of artists started to doubt the importance of their job, and that it's started to feel to a lot of people like they weren't doing a vital service in society, like they should be a doctor or an activist or whatever. And you know, there were certainly low points where I felt inklings of that, but it only takes me remembering how life-changing and healing and necessary the books and the movies and the art that I love has been to my life, and how I don't know who I would be or how I would exist if it weren't for certain artists making their work. And I think that's something that is not to be overlooked. And I think that in society we need all things, right? We need the doctors.
I couldn't live without music. I survived the pandemic because of music.
Right. And I think I remember years ago I was texting with a friend who works with environmental stuff now, and I was like, "Oh, you're saving the world. Like, wish I was doing something more useful." And he totally stopped me and he was like, "We need a good media too. We need people making powerful art." And I really took that to heart, and I think that to follow each of our individual skill sets and interest and fascination has a place in the world. And I think it's really important to listen to the like the gut feelings you have and where you're pulled to. And it's not like I could say, "Oh, I just make art about myself and I'm so close, like I'm so selfish, or I'm so like, you know, I there's a way that I could." Oh, what'd you say?
Like an ego boost.
Yeah, well, there's a way that you could say that, you know, you're only making art to serve yourself, but I don't believe that. I remember when my mom and I wrote a book together called What to Do When I'm Gone,
Yeah, I
and
saw that.
I
So
was
beautiful.
and we were questioning we were just talking about what the book would be, and I was like, "Well, you know, since we're publishing it as a book for the world, should we write about, you know, every scenario of grief that someone could encounter? Should we write about, you know, parts of life that someone might encounter that we haven't experienced?" And really what we landed on was for my mom and I to explore and talk about our very specific relationship is the only way that our book would be relatable to people. There's power in specificity, and there's power in the micro. And so I think in a lot of my work, I'm highlighting the micro as a way to connect with the macro.
Okay. Yeah, that's beautifully said. And I think it's really great that you think of the higher purpose of your art. And I think that is definitely something that I can relate to. And that's really what is going to make people resonate with your work, because they can feel that you're being genuine and that you care. And I think that certainly has to come through in what you do. You know, if uh, you really want to express the truth of who you are. So, and that's certainly something that you do on your platform. I have seen that you use it to advocate for social issues, which I absolutely love. What advice do you have for creatives and influencers who would like to do something similar, who would like to use their art form to promote issues that are important to them?
I think that the thing I learned, and I really just kind of dove into it kind of after the election in 2016, when I just it felt like a bomb had exploded,
Yeah.
and didn't know how to respond. And the thing that I did was like tried to talk about social issues and mostly fundraising is something that I had the most success doing. And the way that I approached that was, I'm gonna approach this with the strengths that I do have. I'm not an expert, I'm not an activist, I'm not gonna drop everything and go to school for something else and then become, this other person. I make art. And so the most effective way I found to to actually make a difference was to just sell my art and give the money to a charity that was doing something important. And I think that looking at that, and it just felt like the most accessible way that I could be of service without having to become someone else, and just kind of looking at it as, okay, well, like, it, I'm from where I am right now, how can I make a difference without, like I said, without just like being a totally different person or questioning my entire career? I'll just be an artist who interacts with these issues, and occasionally does fundraisers, and that's been really effective and gratifying, and has meant for me that I can sort of direct attention and direct funds through my platform. And I would just advise anyone to like look at your skill sets that you already have and figure out how to do something with that, instead of thinking I have to become a different person.
Right. Yeah. I totally agree with you because for the longest time I wanted to volunteer and be more hands-on, but I just for some reason it didn't really it's not something that really called to me, so I decided to kind of express that through my writing and my blog. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. You could make a difference doing whatever you're currently doing, There's I just think you got to be a little bit more resourceful and creative about how you're going to approach it.
Yeah, and there's going to be people who have time to volunteer, and there's going to be people who have money to offer. There's going to be people who can be teachers, or to be just boots on the ground. Like, I think we all have something different to offer, and it's okay to like lean into the one that you are. If you don't have time, maybe you have money. If you don't have money, maybe you know someone, or like, I don't know, can serve a purpose in your own community in your own way.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Hallie, it's been so wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much for making the time to be here and share your wisdom with all of us.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been such a great conversation.
Yeah, I definitely had a great time. Just very quickly, so I just want to let our listeners know that the best place to find out more about you and purchase your book is your website, right? HallieBateman.com. And as usual, I'll add the link in the description. Is there anything else you would like to share with us, Hallie?
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. It's at Hallith Bates. That's HALLITHBATES.
Okay.
And I'm, posting new work, and see my old work, and
Yeah, you
yeah.
love your Instagram feed. I definitely recommend it to everyone listening.
Thank you.